Hello, welcome to Smileys. Tonight since we're experiencing a few technical difficulties, we will be doing a bit more of a weird episode, only if you're on video. In any case, we are doing chapter 12 of Fall of Light. I am joined by Mora. Hi, Mora.
Hi, Lee. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I would hope you are too, but not everything is smooth sailing, unfortunately. Thankfully, this chapter is more enjoyable than the last one, I think, so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun anyway.
Yeah.
So, regardless of all the technical issues, I think it's fun. Right, so Fall of Light chapter 12, spoilers up to the end of Fall of Light chapter 12, and, all the previous...
And Book of the Fallen, and also Lasa Empire, yeah.
Yeah, right. So this chapter is one of those nothing happens kind of chapters in which, basically nothing is happening. All these people are just walking, they're still traveling, and they meet some people on the way, and they keep walking. So that's all this is. But, there's so much happening. I think someone said recently on the subreddit, right? Like Fall of Light is one of those books where nothing happens.
Yeah.
But so much happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. So, right, scene 1. We're naming this the one with all the philosophy. Okay?
Yeah.
So it starts with Lasa inviting Hanako to her fur, and word of warning, there is a lot of explicit stuff in this chapter. I try to restrict as much as possible, but there are some things which we're not doing justice if we don't bring them up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
I'm cringing. Anyway, so she's inviting him, and she offers senseless ratting followed by tender cuddles, or the other way around, or whatever. And Hanako, being young, he's very judgmental. He asks her if her grief is that short-lived that she's inviting him to bed so soon. And Lasa says that she has an emptiness in her soul that needs filling. And he asks, is that do you need more husbands to fill it? And she says she's done with all that. And yeah, if Hanako only dared to look, he would find all types of curiosity in her eyes. Curiosity which is
lascivious
forward, backward,
in nature.
Upside down, sideways, and yeah, what?
It was lascivious in nature, yeah. Forward, back, and sideways and upside down.
Yeah, right. He keeps trying to bring the conversation back to Errol and Creed, who's still with them, who's still dragon fevered, and he's like hallucinating and so fevered right now that even the flies have been avoiding him. And Hanako is force feeding him to keep him alive. Lasa has taken up the responsibility of cooking, and Hanako thinks that maybe Erlen is the actual sane one because he's refusing to eat her food. And Hanako then thinks if Lasa she cooks so bad that even the dead will start fasting. And if there is a kitchen in the afterlife, just note that in the Telakai language, I think they mention rock piles when they mean like afterlife or death. So he hopes that if there is a kitchen in the afterlife, and Lasa finds herself there, all the dead will start coming, they'll spill back into the mortal realms just to escape it. Then she offers her breasts, saying it's like honey and flowers. And he says that he knows her routine. She dabs them with honey and flowers every day. And she's very unhappy at this lack of privacy in this trek, and says that this is just like marriage. And, she can tell him more things about marriage to disavow him from all notions of romantic bliss. Yeah. Then finally he struggles and he brings the conversation back to Erilan and asks him what are they supposed to do with him. Lasa says that she's very practical. She says, what?
No, just
She says,
yeah, go on, sorry.
His life is beyond us. All they can do is bring him to the Jagat or Azathanai and see what they can do. Right? And he gets annoyed and goes towards the lake shoreline and stands there. And what does he see? Oh, he sees first all the detritus lining the shore and thinks that, borderlands of all the worlds are repositories of the discarded. Because collision leads to breaking and not exactly merging. Maybe it has something to do with shorelines which keeps coming up again and again, but who knows? You have anything to add there?
Not in particular. I think it might have to do with like veils and the talk of veils we get throughout whenever such things were mentioned. More so by Resh earlier, but also by this veils of time and veils of space and veils of death and life and whatnot. But I don't know. This is not where the philosophy picks up. It's when our uninvited guest arrives.
Yeah. So then he also thinks, how even the Telakai who are so isolated, even they are not immune to the invasion of ideas. And the only weapon against idiocy is laughter. And an absurdity like war against death is something which is worth laughing at. And they're going to laugh all the way to the Lord of the Rock Piles. But, the weapon might wound the wielder too. So as he's thinking all this, who shows up from the lake? Like, Halle Berry Bond girl emerging out of the water. Raist emerges from the lake, and he calls Hanako a self-obsessed youth while giving him his pack or something, and he joins the camp. He's been traveling on a boat that has sunk, and so he has walked across the bottom of this lake carrying his armor. Yeah. How did you manage to walk across the bottom of the lake?
One step at a time. Yeah.
So Lasa calls him a wastrel and hopes that the guest dries at their fire, dries out into a wisp or something. And then Rice begins explaining his backstory, that the Telakai laughter was so loud that it drove him out of his house. And he just starts telling his story, and Hanako completes it with his boat sank.
Yeah.
She's very excited that
brevity
is being brevity. And then she tells Rice that they don't live eternal lives to just listen to long preambles like this. And then she calls it a day, but asks Hanako to please let this Jagger share his wisdom so that she can be bored to sleep. And then now these two are talking now, Rice and Hanako. Hanako asks about Erlen. Rice asks about Erlen, and he's told that this guy killed a dragon and drank its blood. So Rice expects that he eats his own lice too. Then Rice has an interesting theory that everyone should get a chance to discard their names, like every 10 years or so, and begin their name newly, cleansed of all their history. Right? Maybe it is relevant because Rice turns into a tyrant later.
Maybe.
And hopes that people don't remember that part of his history.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. Yeah. I have trouble reconciling this, like the race of gardens, with every other race we get. So I don't know.
I know. That was exactly what I was going to say. Like if you just remove Rice from Gardens of the Moon or name him something else like Rice Part 2 or something, every other book Rice tracks. Yeah. He's awesome. He's one of like the best guys in the whole.
He's incredibly deadpan. He is a disappointment to his father. He's a lot of things, but not a tyrant.
Yeah, I mean, Rice he's so perfect he is, but yeah, it's only the Gardens of the Moon guy which we can't do. It doesn't track. So anyway, Hanako disagrees and he argues that names are a responsibility, and unlike the Jagged, they yearn for continuity, but the Jagged have discarded, they have rejected that notion, right? And then Rice gives out his name and he's formally welcomed. Rice, please welcome to our fire or something. And then to comfort him about Erlen, he says a brilliant thing. He says, your friend will live or he will die.
Thank you.
And then he asks if Rice is going to join Hood's army, and is told, of course not. But there are plenty of Telakai who like a good joke, and so they are joining. And dog runners who make sorrow a goddess of endless tears, and those guys are joining. And Ilnap who are fleeing a usurper. And Jek and Jelek who are following the scent of blood, Forulkan who are seeking a final arbiter, and petty tyrants who are fleeing
the High King's incorruptible justice. Yeah.
And there are also some Azathanai and whatever this Halakahi means.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
What do you say that?
Halakahi. It sounds Hawaiian or like Polynesian, but I have absolutely no idea what that is.
No. Within Malayalam, it doesn't sound like anything we've heard.
No.
Okay. And Telomen. Yeah, they're all joining. Now Rice says he would almost yield his isolation just so he can go and look at Hood's face when Hood realizes that, the tragedy of who have answered his summons. Hanako thinks that he should have realized that grief will make a vast legion.
True.
Rice says it's not grief that is drawing everyone, but it is the unanswered questions. And Hood might end up refashioning death into a god, which is worthy of cursing. And then he sees dolmens and sacred wells and dancing flies in the future. where people are going to make sacrifices to ensure a fair bargain.
And to
Nice, right?
yeah, to
Yeah.
how do I put this? Well, basically, before someone else gets on it, I'm having a specific person in mind. Go read Dust of Dreams, Chapter 9, to get more context on what an unfair bargain looks like from your boyhood.
What is Dust of Dreams, Chapter 9?
It's when Dead Smell and Hood meet, and he's like, no bargain is fair when only one side pays attention. It basically explains what Hood will say in the future before Hood even says it, because they're jagged and they know each other very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Play going.
Right. Oh yeah. So Hanako says the Telakai believe in balance, and mountains will fill up cliff, and if there is a dune, there has to be a hollow, and so on. And Rice calls it a mind's game to make sense of senseless things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there are rules in place, but these are all vague. And this need to look for predictability is born of comfort, and it can lead to complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as this conversation is going on, Hanako asks him, "You mock our beliefs." And Rice says, "But gently, I assure you."
Yeah.
Then Rice tries to explain
bromance.
why everyone... Yeah?
There's such a bromance. Yeah. Go on.
Bromance, right? Yeah. Now Rice tries to explain why everyone hates the Jagged, because they were overtaken by failure because of their intellect.
Yeah.
How? Settle down. I will explain. This is something like this. This is what he says.
Yeah.
A proud intellect uses the seduction of language and denigrates all that is not rational or beyond comprehension. Right? It gets convinced of its own superiority, and is there anything more obnoxious than that? And it was Gothos who showed them this truth and the paucity of their lives. A triumphant intellect doesn't care about the ashes rising past its knees, the darkening sky fouled with smoke, or the starving children. It lacks humility, and without humility it is incapable of growth. And so to commemorate this, Brood built them a tower of hate. Hanako objects. He says, "Surely there are many gifts of civilization." And Rice closes one eye and starts looking at the gifts. And then with the other eye, he looks at the cost. Like these kneeling poor fools, the self-deceiving leaders, these soldiers who will impose their will. And look, it is reason that rules the world. These necessities of organization are all rational constructs. Maybe we can ask the worth of these things to the slaves when they have a moment or two to catch their breath. Or maybe we can ask the leaders who have the luxury of time to contemplate all this. Or the soldiers, but no, we can't ask the soldiers because they're told not to think, only to obey.
Where then, among these myriad participants, are we to look for judgment?
Nice. Oh. Right. So where are we?
Where then among these myriad participants? Yeah.
And and then Hanako asks, what about the poets, sculptors, painters, bards, etc.? And Rice asks, who listens to them? They only needed Caladan Brood.
Yeah, which is 100% Galan bitching, by the way, and you know it.
Yeah. And they only heeded Caladan Brood because he drove a spear into a civilization which was already a corpse. But the artists, their job is only to attend funerals, and all they do is celebrate a dead past. Some would dance and give to us joy and hope, says Hanako. And Rice says that is a gift of momentary forgetfulness, and this we call entertainment. Does that not have value? It does, except when pursued to excess. And so on. And then he asks, what is your answer, Rice? And what does Rice say?
One sec. Yeah, before we do that. It does, except when pursued to excess. At that point, it becomes denial. And you may recall there is a statue by Caladan Brood in Garganas named Denial.
Denial, yeah.
And it has a bunch of faces that look, outward, stern, and resolute, but they're all, Basically, he decries escapism because it's very similar to what Calor says about compassion and how it's not enough, which is which tracks because it's race, and we know how race ends up. But
it also tracks with what Rake says about age of responsibility.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about Rake so much.
Yeah, because Obviously,
because
you're biased.
because obviously, but I am biased. But anyway, this is not so much something I want to pursue at the minute because I don't remember exactly where this leads, and I might get to spoilers. But what I want to bring up is that, like what Ray says earlier about like language and the jagged civilization and how the intellect knows only itself. That very strongly echoes some philosophy of like this world, I guess. I can't exactly tell you what it is, but I'm sure anyone who at least has heard of these things can probably say, these notions of, how does he put it? Hang on. A mind that has convinced itself of its own superiorities and capable of humility, and in the absence of humility is incapable of growth. This sounds very phenomenological, which, if anyone actually knows what that means, probably has heard at least somewhat of some of these things. I haven't, so I can't say. I'm sorry. But yeah, if you have any idea or if you have anything to say about that, please leave a few comments below. Would be fascinated to listen.
Yeah. So anyway,
please carry on.
what does Rice say? His answer is he's going to create a new civilization where he will attempt the impossible.
Yeah.
And it is going to fail because they're all imperfect creatures. And so they can't do a just society. They cannot perfect it. Without tyrannies of thought and deed, without malice, without natural vices like greed, envy, or the desire to dominate. Hanako says they must at least try. And Rice says the problem with trying is that it indicates a willingness to accept flaws. So one must first acknowledge it, but remember, the intellect is already convinced of its superiority over others and over nature too. And this is when he brings up the line, the shore does not dream of you, and asks Hanako, what does this mean? Hanako is very clever. He says nature will prove itself superior to our every conceit. And Rice says humility is the only answer. To be skeptical of one's own superiority, just as the intellect is skeptical of others' superiority over itself. And looking inward is the way to true courage, the kind of courage that brings you to your knees, but also have the will to rise once more. Hanako calls this an unending journey, something that would test a soul to the core. And Rice says, my favorite line, he says, this is a life well lived, a life of worth. But alas, these words are all wasted on youth, and Hanako thanks him nevertheless. Right? You want to say something, or?
All I want to say is that, like, this, you describe an unending journey, I describe a life lived well, is a very interesting take on, Sisyphean things, of things that, you have to repeat over and over. This, the will to rise once more, to begin it all over again. I'm not going to say, like, this is inspired by Sisyphus or Camus' existentialism, but nonetheless, Race is echoing a lot of philosophers here, which is weird because, it drinks. Who a few pages from here will go on talking about like mutton and venomous lizards and shit. So
he's just talking according to his audience. Hanako will listen and actually ask him like intelligent questions back. What is Garelko going to ask him?
We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're gonna say it very quickly.
So as they're talking, and then Rice tells him that the dog runners say that they rise and fall both can be seen in the flames. But what about ashes? This is all a bit too, I felt this a bit too, very vague. He says something like, all ashes indicate is that something has burned here. And if something has burned too brightly, there is not even a shape left behind. It is all scattered to the wind. And Hanako asks if there is no hope for legacy, and is told to hope or even aspire for legacy. But the future is not in their control, and they can't control it. This, I felt, was very similar to what Rice was being told by Grison, that the future you cannot impose meaning to what the future is going to decide, or something like that. No?
Effectively, I think this kind of circles back to what Calvin was saying, that we cannot impose intent on the future, that our intent will inevitably be lost, right? Like, who can say what I intended when I built this monument 100 years ago? No one can, because no one can ask me personally. So basically, Race is kind of saying you should live your life to the fullest for the now rather than aspire to the future. Rather, you should aspire to the future, but you should also know that your intentions are not going to be met in the future.
It's not in your control.
Yeah, because the ashes are going to be scattered, especially if you burn brightly and quickly and flare up quickly and then burn again. No one's going to be able to tell what shape you were, what intent you had, what kind of person you were, which, if that sounds at all familiar with Fiddler's monologue about the historians that are going to overturn every boulder seeking signs of ambition, and in doing so they will miss the whole fucking point. Yeah, that's the culmination of what Race is saying here, and I think, is they're not doing it because of legacy, they're doing it because of the right thing, and that's what you should be doing. Right? You should aspire to the future, but you should live in the now, in the present, which I think is a good message from Race, which is saying a lot. Like, not my tyrant. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think Hanako then tells him, I travel to find an army that seeks death, to wage a war that cannot be won. And in my heart, I yearn for failure and dream of glory. Then he asks about the Azathanai, and Rice doesn't have much to say. All squalid wretches, every one of them or something. And Rice says he can't heal Erlen either, and it's possible that their draconic blood is attractive to the kin of the slain dragon. And he assures Hanako that he has lively days ahead of them because the dragons are going to start chasing them. Right. That was scene 1, and now scene 2 is the one with all the banter. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's these guys, the 3 husbands. They have camped near the dead dragon body, which is now rotting. Garelko tries to poke it, and Tathanal, whose curiosity is Tathanal, right?
Tathanal, yeah.
Yeah, whose curiosity lies dead like a tiny bird, stops it.
Jesus.
Right? But Garalko, with his keen observation, he has concluded that the dragon did not build a cairn for interring Ravast's battle axe, and also it did not crush its own skull either. Okay, so there is a lot of this. There's a lot of this bantering and bickering for a while, and then something like I'll just hit the highlights. So Tathanal has been dragging in trees wherever they camp because he keeps dreaming of a flood, and Ravast mocks him. In case you're confused, Garalko is husband number 1, Tathanal is husband number 2, and Ravast is husband number 3. Right.
Yeah.
So Ravast mocks him, and Tathanal says, "I'm generously offering you a berth when the floods come and we'll have to escape." And he says that I don't see a vessel. There are only trees and branches and everything. And if he can't see the boat in these trees and branches, that means he doesn't have a superior mind. Right?
This obviously reminisces the later part where Garelko is like, yes, witness, Pop, the qualities of a leader. It's just, this comes up a lot, and it's great.
They just call him Pup, like, that's his name. Everyone calls him Pup. Okay. Now Ravast is sure that Lasa thinks these guys are dead, and maybe she cried and tore her hair. Garalko says he has looked around in the campsite and he didn't find any clumps of hair. So it's more likely that she's taken Hanako to bed. And maybe by now she's pregnant also. I don't know why. Now he wants, Ravas to join him. Garalko is saying this because let's rush and catch our disloyal wife and the adulterer Hanako. And they are going to...
One second.
Who's this? This guy, what's his name? Garelko wants Ravas to join him so that they can go and catch their disloyal wife and the adulterer Hanako. And they're going to unveil their... How do you say that word? I honestly don't know. Do you say?
Hang on. Their what?
Their razor beak of what?
Wait.
I don't want to attempt saying it.
Wait.
Anyway, they will grind her into misery and remorse. But Tatral says he looks forward to finding them floundering in deep waters. And as he goes by in his boat, he's going to... I interpreted this as him waving at them as he goes by. But I think... Are you there?
Yeah, I interpreted it as them giving him giving them the finger.
Yeah, say something like meanest flutter of his fingers.
Fingers, yeah.
So maybe he's being vulgar, or maybe he's just being like very, casually saying bye as he goes. Now, Ravas says he's going to try and drown himself if there is a flood in his dreams, and he might die happy rather than listening to this guy. And Garelko says Ravas is too young to be so dull. But Garelko is old enough that, when he looked at his reflection in the river, he was shocked by the dullness in his eyes. And Tathanal says something like, their shock has been, worn off long back because Garelko's gaze can blunt his sword's edge. He has wit to bludgeon them and so on and so on. And then he tells them both to get lost. And they say that, they'll take the tent down. And if he wants, he can sleep in his boat. But then Tathanal says, okay, fine, I'll join you guys. And this is when, because he has to join them because the pup is too wild and wayward, and the ancient man has creaking bones and he can't even lift his weapons. So and they're getting late, and they have a treacherous wife to hunt down.
Yeah.
That was scene 2. Do you have anything to add there?
Not really.
Yeah. So yeah, scene 3, the one with all the monologues. It's actually a continuation of the same scene,
Yeah,
but
it's
I
the same
just separated
scene.
it because
Yeah.
it's, it
A
just
lot of
changes
monologues.
track. Yeah. All this was just lots of jokes, and the rest of it is also lots of jokes and trying to be funny stuff. But the scene 3 is like the heart of this chapter. This is where,
Yeah.
it makes you feel things, right? I like you just casually laughing along, and then all of a sudden it's just,
And then you remember, oh fuck, it's full of light. So yeah, of course we have to have
yeah,
feelings
it's
somewhere.
Erickson. Yeah. True. So yeah, husband number 3, Ravast, he thinks back to the time their village was attacked by Teloman raiders, and he had joined the initial suicide line by mistake. What stands out to him during this battle was the utter silence and anticipation with which the elders faced this battle. They all fell without a cry, without even asking for mercy or anything. They just fell where they stood. And Ravas survived, and the Teloman never even reached the village that day. He was proclaimed a hero and a fool, and that was the day he caught the eye of Lasa. But the truth is, he fights that same battle many times in his dreams, and he only feels fear now. And after getting with Lasa, he has set aside his weapons, and most people thought it's because she has ensnared him so much. But the truth is, he has built high walls around his fears, and any ship in the surrounding sea is bound to sink. He hopes that she does not risk Jagged's path. He hopes that, she knows when to turn back. But if she doesn't, he is going to confess everything. That the widows and widowers in that line were silent, and they were bittersweet in anticipation. And he also died that day in that line. And once he tells her this, they will all laugh at the breaking of their souls and head back to their peaceful farm. Oh God. And then one day when the Teloman return, he is going to take up his place in silence and blessed anticipation. And he also thinks that the way he had battled the dragon, Dal, he thinks it was only by chance that he hit it. So he has all these, insecurities with him. And somehow the walls had held that day. Garelko groans and tells Ravas to carry this old man for, he's so old and all that. And what does Ravas think? It's so
No,
sad. He thinks,
I already
yeah,
carry too many.
too many. Yeah.
Why?
So right.
Why is Steve like this?
Why Steve? Yeah, not why Ravas. Why Steve? Why? Yeah. Oh, this is so sad. Right. Can we please go back to Hanako, Hanako or something?
Yeah. Okay, before we move on, I want to point out one thing. So,
yeah,
we often, among at least the people who have actually read Fall of Light, there is one question, like, why is this storyline?
why does it exist? Yeah.
Why does it exist? And, beyond the levity and the banter that you get, I think since one of the key things, well, Mora has made a very convincing argument that Karkanas is ultimately a love story. I'm not going to comment on that here, but what I want to say is that the 3 husbands can be viewed to represent 3 different aspects of love or attraction. You have sexual attraction, you have romantic attraction, you have what I was saying before we were rudely interrupted one more time is that the 3 husbands represent the 3 different forms of attraction. Now there's more, depending on how you view them, but for our purposes, there's 3. Sexual attraction, romantic attraction, and aesthetic attraction. I will not let you know because you can probably guess who the sexual attraction is. If you've read the chapter, you can probably guess.
Such a pervert, yeah.
It's more difficult to discern which between Tathanal and Ravast are the other 2, but I think both can coexist at the same time, since Ravast seems like, he isn't, I guess, laying with Lasa. He's more like appreciating, because she's the most coveted woman in the island, right? But she's just given to him, rather not given to him. She came to him because he's like the hero and the fool of the village, not because he looks amazing.
That's
Dathanol, yeah. Admittedly, yes. Who is not even particularly attracted to her, it seems. Guy's just like going along with the ride.
He's too
So
young.
yeah. So I think one of the things that the storyline, more than anything else, expresses is the key theme of love in Karkanos, because we see this a lot throughout the book, and like it's new. For instance, see to what extent Strakonus goes to because of love. But we don't really see such a pure expression of love in its many forms, because it's not just, oh, I love you, I love someone. No, it's like her hefty, her, Lucius and whatnot, the Garelko stuff.
It's like
Are also
it encompasses
similar
everything,
expressions.
right? It's all
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself, but there is this line when this guy, what's his name, Garelko thinks that, so what if she marries Hanako? What is one more husband to the milling crowd? You know? So I don't know, it just encompasses everything about Lasa, like whatever she is. It's very refreshing. I don't know. I like this a lot.
Yeah. So feel free to take us back.
Right. So we have husband number 2.
Yeah.
This has to be announced like like the one in Shrek, bachelorette number 1, bachelorette number 2, like that. So Tapanal, he's been having flood dreams for years and years, and it's not always about floods. It's also disasters of every kind, where he alone sees the signs of impending calamity and tries to warn everyone, but nobody listens to him, and he's usually the last one to fall. And yeah, and as he's walking, he thinks that familiar voices, these other guys, these voices take away the sting from their dismissive words, and habits and patterns could be worn like old clothes. He knows that he's not unique in fearing death. Warriors, wives, herders, poets, everyone tries to fight against death, but this is an enemy which cannot be defeated and it never loses. He understands Hood, he understands the summoning, and he also understands the futility of it. Now, being the middle husband, he feels that he is on a tottering bridge with Ravast on one side and Garalko on the other end. And in a predictable world, Garalko would fall first and he would take up that place. And Lasa, who, if she continues to be as unchanging as she was, she's just going to replace Ravast with a new youth. And he doesn't like exactly this mental construct he has, but this is what he has made. And isn't a bridge a stupid thing to consider? What torrent does it span? When he reaches the other end, what is he going to find there? And if he names this bridge his soul, one that is carrying from birth to death, then no wonder he fears all these disasters like floods. Do you want to add something there? Because I'm not very sure where he's going with this, with the bridge metaphor again.
Good question. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, right. So then he thinks of the burden.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Let's see. Okay. He thinks of the burden he has placed on his fellow husbands, and he feels love for them in the way they stand aligned and together, opposite to Lasa. And this is a nice quote. He says something like, do you want to say that? No soul.
No soul deserves to stand alone, and families both found and made serve the same purpose. In his dreams, it was this that he saw swept away time and again. In his dreams, he ever ended up alone.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he is actually planning to join this army, right? He knows that the others might not understand him. Definitely Lasa is not going to understand, but he was settled with that final departure. He thinks that with death, there is an end to a soul's solitude, which is a bit weird, but then he thinks, Hood, your army will be vast. So these are the two guys. Husband number 1, 2, and 3 are over. Let's reach the actual
husband number 1.
Garelko. Yeah. Now.
God, Garelko is something else.
He is. Yeah, I know. So he's the eldest, so he's in the lead and he sets the pace, and this is all proper, being the eldest. He's hunting his quarry, who is elusive, and there are like 3 pages or so of this guy lusting after his wife, and there are
Yep.
like paragraph worth of description of different body parts. So I don't think we need to go there. Anyway,
Yeah.
he
No.
thinks she is convinced they are dead. Actually, he goes something like, "Oh, I finished these body parts. Now let us think about this one." It just goes, yeah, right. So Garelko,
Yeah.
he's convinced.
Yeah.
He thinks that she is convinced that these guys are all dead, and is even now gasping in Hanako's arms. And what is adding another husband to the herd matter? But she's going to crave experience, and she will come back to him sooner or later. Now, he thinks that he didn't even believe in dragons. This dragon was so rude in its interrupting their conversation. And
We are
he just
skipping
seemed,
across quite a few things here, by the way, which are all just descriptions
do
of
you want to
Lasa's
be my
body
guest?
parts.
Go
No,
on,
no,
go
no,
on. Do
go
the
on.
descriptions. I'll wait. I just
I have
told you
no
there are like
desire to
three
do so.
pages worth
Yeah,
of stuff. I'm not
yeah.
going to go there.
Just saying, for
Did
anyone
you?
that's actually read this, we are skipping all the descriptions. They're like half a page in my caliber, which is like 3 pages in paperback, just describing body parts.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I finished this. Now let us think about this part. So it's fine. It's very healthy. It's nice that, this married couple who've been married for so long still have these thoughts, but we don't need to listen to that. Let's talk about dragons. Can we talk about dragons?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah. What he remembers is seeing this dragon eating this peeled bear, and he thinks, was it so dainty of disposition that it is peeling the bear before eating it?
God.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you'd find this funny or not. Because who was that? Hanako had skinned the bear, right? And that is what the
Yeah, yeah.
dragon was eating. So this guy thinks, why has it like peeled this bear before eating it? Like, this is so dainty or something. Now, he thinks that it is a wild, hoary beast of legend, and they're going to just kill everyone they see. Now, turn back to Lhasa. The sweetness of life is anticipation, which this pup doesn't know, and Tatanal barely comprehends. And there are talks about and mountains, backsides, and cracks of paths and caves, and so on, so on. And these are only distractions, right? Lhasa runs in order to be caught. Uh, I've just written like, piecemeal. I've not like made any attempt to keep this coherent. And then he thinks that he's going to pour wine over her and so on. And
This
because,
is basically how Garelko thinks, yes. He
yeah,
thinks in sexual metaphors, and it's. I can see why
but
people are confused why this exists in the book, I'm gonna be honest.
but I'm just enjoying it. Like, why won't people just relax and enjoy it?
Yeah.
It's not so bad. Yeah. Well, anyway, uh, he's Telakai. He's not Ticed. So you know what he has?
No. Yeah?
He has self-awareness. He thinks,
Right.
isn't this mind a wondrous world? Reality stands no chance against all these inner creations, dragons notwithstanding.
I love that
You're still
quote.
laughing at the Ticed though.
I love the like, oh yeah, the mind is a
Reality.
wonder, like, which contrasts very interestingly with like what Race was saying earlier about like the mind that knows humility and so on. And it's like, yeah,
That's the intellect, yeah.
reality stands no chance against such inner creations, except for dragons.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah. So that was scene 3. Do you want to go to scene 4?
yeah.
This is the one with all the time talk.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, this
Okay,
is where.
so
Okay, yeah, this is where male. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay.
male, I think, shows up a little bit later. I don't remember. Okay.
No, no,
Now,
this is the pinnacle of Steve's writing. He sets up a whole like thing, and it's just you'll see.
yeah. So now, I might have skimmed a lot here because, Right, so Krull and Skill and Row are walking along. Somewhere the Sidelways has gone off in the fog, and they're walking along this place, and they reach a basin, which is basically a
Hmm.
huge city, but it is at insect scale. Should we have that Zoolander meme saying, "What is this? A city for ants?" Right. Now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, Cruel wishes they had a simpler path and wonders, if it is their imagination that keeps conjuring stuff like this in their path. And he suggests that can we just fly over this city? And Skillen has a lecture on how insects are so dumb that they don't notice anything till it disturbs them and so on, which is, you know, very pointed commentary
The
on this.
entire thing is just pointed commentary, yes.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah. Now, Cruel wonders if there are malcontents among them, and if they walk in, would they be considered the scourge of gods? And will cults rise? And they might consider them either vengeful gods or indifferent gods, depending on the interpretation. Skillen asks, do you think these creatures even have recorded history and literature and all that? And Krull points out there are statues and artisans and opposing pairs of occupations, like there are philosophers and inventors, historians and politicians, etc. Why are they in opposition? Because inventors invent without thinking of the consequences, especially the unintended ones. So there is always a conflict between thinkers and doers, and this is what Gothos had told them. Civilization is an argument between these two.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Samardev has some monologues like this? When she invents something, she tries to think about what are the consequences. I think there is a monologue somewhere. I'm not sure which book.
Almost
I don't
certainly,
know.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if not in this book, then probably in Witness, because you have the Dev stand-in in The Gods Not Willing.
Who's that?
Annex Row.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I somehow remember it
Though
as
I don't think she's the kind of person to think about, if like what the conflict between
Are we
philosophers
spoiling Witness?
and
We did not mention we'll spoil Witness.
we kind of are, I guess. Anyway, yeah,
We just mentioned one name, so it's okay.
yeah. Anyway, but yes, I'm fairly sure Samar at least considers these questions when she comes across Karsa, probably.
Yeah. Now, Skillen also notes this is they're talking about Coral Galen, right? This part here, this insect city part.
Mm-hmm.
So Skillen sees soldiers marching around, and the queen is in hiding. And even if she speaks, she only speaks in scents and flavors. Krull replies that isn't that enough because you also speak the same way and you are able to convey complex thoughts. And he asks what makes Skillen doubt this civilization, and he says that he doesn't feel doubt, what he feels is belittled. Then Krull thinks
Yeah.
if nature is setting up obstacles to obscure some banal truth for them. Now, they start discussing about time, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I did this. I have no idea if I'm right or wrong. So I'm just going to read out what I've written. In any journey, the eye measures the step spans the distance, and the mind conjures a place for it. Though time is unchanging, sentient beings like us, we crowd it or stretch it or clutter time. Krull says that they have the will to bend time to suit them, and there's an insert where Skillen asks, "Can we really?" and something. And then, if there is no confusion in an ideal world, time is fixed. But alas, confusion is as stubborn as a shadow. So, between an insect crossing this city and Skillen who is able to fly over it, time has a varying scale. And Skillen says that it is their perception that is varying, not time itself. And
Mm-hmm.
Krull says that is all we have. What else do you have other than perception? Now, Skillen talks about the Kachain Chamal who make clocks that can divide time itself. And Krull
Mm-hmm.
asks if insects and the Kachain do they sense these time intervals in the same way? Skillen insists it is only their perception that changes, whereas time itself is precise and consistent. Krull says that they
Yep.
have to look at the scale and call it relevant. Skillen says that maybe by imposing order on a force of nature like time, they are trapped. And to this, Krull has no reply. Please, do you have something to add here?
Okay, I have a lot of things actually. So
Yeah,
first and
thank you.
foremost, both
Yeah.
are technically correct and technically wrong.
Hmm.
Speaking for our world, time is relative insofar as the system of reference is concerned. To make a much more to make this more succinct, depending on how you perceive things, like Krull says, time can either be absolute or it can be relative. And scale also matters because usually time dilation effects only only are considerable at like light speed, at like extreme speeds, due to certain equations relating to relativistic effects. So, for our purposes, if you have a driver, let's say, that drives around the world at 100 kilometers per hour for his entire life, his life is technically going to be longer than everyone else's by 0.0001, 10 to the minus 8 or something seconds. So, for our purposes, for the insect scale, such variation is imperceivable. So, in creating such clocks, yes, we can make time absolute. But on the cosmic scale, time kind of falls apart. It's a very interesting discussion, which we're not going to have here because I'm not a physics major. But an argument can be made that photons don't experience time. And so any being that could travel as fast as light can, not that anyone can, but this is Malazan, this is fantasy, would perceive time differently. And also, since you did mention Coral Galen, to bring this back to Malazan, there is a very obvious parallel between the insects and the Kichain who are trying to impose order on time, and Draconis, who is trying to impose order on darkness. The quote goeth thusly, I think. Hang on. It may be, said Skillandro, as he unfolded his wings, that in creating their clocks, the Kichain Kimale have imposed an order and a focal point upon a force of nature that heretofore knew no rules, and by this creation we are now trapped. You may notice that this maps very well to Coral Galen and the sorcery of Coral Galen more specifically. That focal point being darkness, and more specifically the Terrandai and the Gate of Dark, and the imposition of order being, well, Dragonipper, but that's for later. We've not seen that yet, technically. But
No.
That's the culmination of Draconis' attempt to impose order upon chaos by creating a determinist. Yeah.
I thought he was imposing order by creating the Terranda itself, which
Yeah,
is a
that's
gate.
one thing.
Yeah, as of now, it is that. That is the order which has been imposed. And
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, what ends up happening is he goes further with us, and he creates Dragonipper so that he can impose his order on the wandering of the Gate of Darkness, which he gets chastised about repeatedly in this book. By the way, he hasn't even made Dragonipper yet, and people are already calling him out on his bullshit. Like, this is a bad idea. But this is Draconis, so he's if there's one thing Draconis definitely is, it's obstinate. So, a fairly interesting conversation, but ultimately, I like the quote about being belittled because, it is not doubt that I feel belittled by the fact that insects can make a civilization that, can be just as grand on their scale as anyone we can make. So, in a sense, nobody that makes civilization is special per se, which is a curious distinction, but not for me to make right now. Anyway, please carry on.
Right. So that was the only thing which, like, so I'm definitely sure I didn't notice it in the first read about the whole parallel between imposing order, because this is the closest metaphor we can get for having a clock. Imagine a world without clocks. There is still time, there is still your perception of time, but there is nothing to really force you into having, say, a 7 o'clock appointment or something, right? Because it's only the development of clock which is going to trap you into this order. So I think that's a very nice way of explaining what exactly this Gate of Darkness is doing here. Right. Now, as they're standing and talking, Skillen spots a sea beyond this valley and says that, we know who is responsible here. And Skillen, who has burnt every bridge he has been on, he says that even Mail is not going to welcome him. And then he picks up Krull and flies up to the beach and drops him there. And when they're walking, Krull didn't realize that they were on an island. And as I said, the tidal waves has disappeared and it is nowhere there between the worlds, right? So there are no distinctions between these worlds. It's all arbitrary. And just because the Azathanai have access to plenty of these realms, they seem to think they are the makers of these places. And this is a difficult notion to shake. This point, I have no idea what it means. It says something like, particularly when it seemed, as it did now, that two wills could war with creation itself. Which are the two wills which are warring with creation?
One sec.
Who are they?
Hang on.
Just, I think, the next page or so.
Yeah. Down. Hang on, I'm gonna get to this. Hang on, give me 1 second. I'm reading this.
Yeah, I'll read.
It's in the layers. Two wills. I guess he talks about himself and Skillen, no?
Is it? Are they warring with
Since
creation?
basically they are, he is watching from above and he sees a realm of detritus and dust, of abandoned thrones and monuments that then dwindles into a fog, and then that fog and the island as a whole marks a boundary between worlds. And then he thinks, okay, but is that a distinction to make? No, it isn't. It's just some arbitrary distinction. And he therefore, because the Assassinite clearly have are basically gods, right? Galan doesn't outright call them gods, but they're basically gods.
No, I think
he thinks.
Vix calls himself a god in the very next section.
Galan says, "Are they gods?" And my answer to that. And if they are, they're stupid ones or something like that.
They're
But
different gods,
yeah. More importantly, here Krull says, like we have access to so many different worlds, and maybe we do make these places of detritus and ruined thrones and ruined monuments and whatnot. So maybe we're literally playing God. Maybe me and Skillen are warring against creation itself to create new things or to destroy other things, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah,
Which is basically Krull I can't find words today, I'm sorry. It's basically Krull moping and considering the notions of his potential, shall we say, his power.
Okay. So anyway, this island is Male's doing, who is whimsical, and so he peoples these lands with these absurdities. And Male walks out of the sea. Do you want to know his description here? He's obviously naked. He's pale and he has bland blue eyes. Okay. Where did we stop? Shit.
I don't remember. I'm very sorry. It was when you were describing male. You were describing male.
Yeah. So I can describe him again. No problem.
Yeah.
We've been not doing your back technical issues or anything. It's okay. It's fine. We can do it in the recording. So, Male walks out of the sea. He looks very different compared to the Male we see in Midnight Tides, was it?
Where he's blonde and
blue skin,
patchy and blue skinned and fat.
Yeah, like his belly is turning slightly golden yellow or something.
Yeah,
the rest
yeah,
of him is blue. It's fun, right? Now, he tells the first thing he tells is Killen is here to apologize, and then he tells Krull that it was better if he could bleed out into the sea instead of this untampered power. And Krull says that not all of them are insects, and Male says he does this because it amuses him. They tell him that they're going to the Vitre, or specifically the bay of Starwell Demelaine, right? Where the gate now resides.
Yep.
And they don't know if it is open or unguarded or anything, but they tell Male to move the sea which is in their way. Male says he didn't deliberately put a sea there and ask if they did not come to just speak with him. Now, while this is going on, finally Skillen apologizes. Why? What did he do? He has lifted an whole underwater mountain, right? And he's hollowed it out into a city and gave it to the Kachan for testing, and he's also lost it, so he doesn't even have it anymore. Now Male is mad because the place where he ripped the mountain out, that is a raw wound now. Anyway, he gives them permission to fly across, and Skillen points out that these insects, they have even built a tiny ship and they're trying to sail the seas or something, which is less.
Oh, really now?
Yeah.
So you get no points for guessing that this flying mountain is very probably Moonspawn.
Yeah.
So right.
This is the way it's been described, right? Like it's a mountain, it's just flying, and it's an underwater mountain, and that's why probably Endist might have found it easy to keep it underwater in Memories of Ice. Now, scene 5. This is the one where they eat mutton. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the husbands have finished their lunch, and Tathanal predicts how this meeting with Lasa is going to turn out. He says something like Hanako is going to look stricken because he is what? He's the lord of betrayals.
The Lord of Betrayals and something else.
There are so many other things. It keeps coming. He gets a lot of titles in this. But you were talking about Hunral coming up with so many titles for himself.
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Hanako
Now
is just
people get
gifted with so many titles. Right. So even if Hanako looks stricken, Lasa is going to be outraged. She's going to yell at them that you made me think you were all dead, and at once all these three are going to start apologizing, and this is what is going to happen. Tathanar concedes that nothing is going to save them from that maelstrom. Now Ravast, he wonders why she seems to be marching in such a hurry, and Garalko suggests it's because she anticipates sleeping with this young pup. There is mention of swollen meat and lot of cuckolding and all, but let's not go there. Okay. Ravast calls out
because
the
of course
pervert.
Garelko. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Garalko. As soon as this guy opens his mouth, you know that you have to start censoring stuff. Now Ravast calls out the pervert and says she is marching because she is looking for them, beyond death. And Tatanal agrees. Listen to the boy, he seems to have a point. She rushes to battle death with terrible purpose to get them back. Then Garalko and him, they come up with a whole bunch of metaphors of stopping her before it's too late.
Yeah, the chasm crossed, the river forded, the pit leapt into, the veil parted, the chalice sipped, okay, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Now Ravast is as annoyed as we are, and he says, I'm going to take the lead, you guys can follow me. Garalko says they will grip the hem of his genius and they will consider themselves blessed. Tatanal welcomes him to be the first one to reach her delighted embrace, and if Hanako objects, why? They will just kill him and make his skull a cup for her bedside. Right?
Jesus.
And they start going when Garalko protests that he hasn't yet finished his toilet. Is there one decent thing Garalko tells in this whole chapter?
I don't believe so.
I think the only thing he tells is Ravast, you have another guest in your yard or something.
Is it
There's a
the
dragon
is it
in your yard.
the fucking the knuckles on wood thing?
Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Wait, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, they start walking. They're skirting the lake, and a storm is following them, so they need to hurry. Basically, they're all competing to see who can lead a more punishing pace. And the two older husbands mock Ravast for, and they remind him of how he faced the Telemann raiders and all that. Then Garalko points out that there is a roof for the next clearing, which might suit them for shelter. Ravast allows Garelko to lead them, and Tathanal advises him, please don't bash the door. And this guy asks, why not? Because, the purpose of a door is to keep out the weather, it is for shelter. And Garelko concedes, okay, then any suggestions? And what is he said? You can just knock. Knuckles on wood. Yeah. Now,
Sound notion.
sound notion, yeah. And then he has a lesson, right? He has a lesson to Rava saying, this is how a leader leads. See, I knew this, being eldest, I already knew this, obviously. But I have to let whatever. Oh, Garalko is so full of shit. Now, Ravas considers the flavor of this companionship and mutual loyalty they need to survive being married to Lasa. What?
Oh my god. Sorry. The fact that he has to put up with Garelko's shit because Lasa is somehow worse is just
It's worse, yeah.
hilarious to me.
It is what? It's a working dynamic. Like, well, who are we to judge them? No.
Yeah, for sure.
He's happy with all the games of
Oh god.
one-upmanship they play with each other. And what does he say all of a sudden? I really had to stop reading this book here at this point. Oh, Lasa, do return with us.
Lasa, yeah.
Go on.
And heal the lifetime of the inconsequential, I beg you.
Yeah.
The feels.
Right. Please, let's go to rice and mutton and venomous lizards.
Yeah.
Now, they reach Rice's house.
Every single raised line is just quotable as fuck.
Now, for a Jagat, he's extremely welcoming. He just, he just complains a bit and then even gives them dinner and everything. So he says that they have disturbed him as he's ready to sit down for sober study. And then he provides them dinner, and you have the joke like, is this venomous lizard? And he says, no, you fool, you're eating mutton. But this lizard is actually up in the rafters, and so he tells them to not bang their heads, and they all crouch and walk around. Now they have like normal dinner conversations like what? Garelko saying his
Yeah,
vowels are
I never
broken.
liked mutton because my bowels are irritable. They're very
It's going to be busy this night. That's
they're
what he
very
says.
dainty. Yeah, yeah.
Shit. And then Tathanal asks, why is Rice studying? Didn't they surrender the future? Rice studies, says he studies the past, and of the present, best we say nothing. He says the past is dead, and Rice calls them a fool since they're trying to join Hood's army. They say no, that's not what they're doing. They're pursuing their wife to bring her back. Then
Yeah.
Rice gives them a description of both Lasa and Hanako.
Yeah,
How does
is
he
your wife
describe?
buxom, sensuous in an indolent if slightly randy way, golden locked, blossom cheeked, full lipped, and inclined to snoring? Yes,
Yes,
all of those
all
things.
of those. And how does he describe Hanako? A tall, brave who can cut
Brave,
you into
big enough
pieces.
to break you all into pieces. Yeah, a true warrior of a man wearing nothing but rags and yet freshly scarred and scabbed from head to toe.
As soon as they hear this, the scarring and scabbing, they feel very bad because Rava says she has had her way with him and she has not done all these things with any of us. So they're very sad. Tatanal groans that they have been cast away and he feels even worse for Ravas because you're so young and you're no match for Hanako. And yeah, they start calling him the thief of love, the ravished, the pawed and clawed, the smarting yet smug Hanako. Okay, this is so this is so much fun. Can you believe this is a book? If this is Fall of Light. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now Rice continues. He says the third one in their company was dragon fevered, and he repeats that the guy will live or he won't. And they might see his body or maybe Hanako's body because his throat is probably lustfully gnawed up to the vertebra. His ashen face is smiling, and Garalko says,
Oh my god.
let's just return home. Let's give her up to him. Even yeah, oh I think this is the point where this whole thing comes up with Ravas is not warrior enough for her. And so they have lost the battleground. I'm not going to mention where, but they have lost the battleground of Lhasa. Now Ravas wants to confront her. Tathanal gets one word in. He starts saying something like blood, and Ravas jumps on him. And if she wants to go to the rock piles, then they are going to merrily send her on the way with, a boot to her backside or something. And Rice,
Ladies of Fury, her blush backside. God.
yeah.
Uh,
And what does
sorry.
Rice say? He says the
Please
only thing
continue.
which is perfect.
Yeah,
This is all rather
this is all.
pathetic,
Yeah.
but highly entertaining. Now, there is sudden
We
thunder.
promise we're serious podcasters, okay? We're professional idiots.
We are not even drunk today. We are stone cold sober. And we are giggling.
I had nothing to drink.
Right. Now there is sudden
Yeah.
thunder, and the whole roof shakes, and the lizard falls to the table. Garelko is so mad. He's like, "Is this the one where we have to, crouch because of this thing?" And he grabs it and throws it out the door. And then he comes back and tells Rice that there is another guest standing in the yard. And Rice asks if the lizard is preparing to incest. But no, he
My
says there
god.
is another dragon there. Now, Rice pulls on a
Oh
leather
my
cloak
god.
which has a nipple because it has been hanging on the hook for so long, which is such a relatable thing. And then he walks out. These guys try their best not to laugh because, after all, he's a jagged. And Ravas suggests Garelko keep him company, and so they walk out. Right? Rice tells them something like Kilimandaros has a lot to answer for. Garelko says, please don't take our goddess's name in vain, even though she is fictional. And Rai says, she's not fiction, she's real. She hates dragons, and that's why these guys have also been attacking dragons. But not here and not now. He tells Garelko to leave the conversation to him. Which conversation? The one he's going to have with the dragon. And just to note, this dragon has 4 limbs and wings. Right? It's not a 2 limb plus wings type of dragon. Now, she says the jacket and Telakai must have just met because they are not at each other's throats. And she says she found her brother's body higher on the trail. Garalko thinks that maybe she's, getting angry or something. And he says they were taken by surprise and that's why they attacked it. Sorit, that's her name. Sorit says he is afraid of her vengeance. And then Rice clears it up. Telakai don't have enough wits to be afraid of anything. And then she says this realm seems dangerous to her kind, and that's because Kilimandaros is in this realm. Then she decides that she's going to gather her kin and they're going to start planning vengeance. He points her to
Yep.
the east, the Azathanite plain for Kilimanjaros, where she no longer guides her children. I'm almost done. Do you have something to say?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
We know Sorry, right? We've heard of
We
her.
don't know. I don't know. Sorry. Who's she?
You don't? It's the
What's her full
dragon
name?
that Mappa and Icarium find in that Sky Jeep
Yeah.
in the Bone Hunters. Yeah. She's aspected to Cirque, and she's dead as fuck. So, you know.
Oh, poor
Don't get too
soul.
attached.
Yeah. Okay, fine. I'll not get attached. Right. Thanks. Now, as a god, Kilimanjaros is cursed to be bored, frustrated, exacerbated, and spiteful, etc. He assures Sorit that Skillen hasn't been seen in a while, and with that she is glad. And she says she will leave once the storm breaks. Then she tells Garelko that her brother was out for her blood, so she's not going to take any vengeance. She's glad that he is dead. Garelko says it is very sad to see siblings fall out because families must be bastions of well being, kindness, and love. She asks, is
Aw.
yours like that, Telakai? And he says, perhaps it will be once we hunt down our wayward wife and kill her lover and drag the damned woman back home. Then they will be well being, a family of kindness and love. So that
Yeah.
was scene 5. Shall we go to scene 6?
Yeah.
This is the one with random Asathanai because I have no idea if these guys come back or who these are. So
I can't say.
Okay, I have no idea, right? So part A is Krull, who is being carried by Skill and Row, and as he's traveling, he starts napping, and then they find a boat where Krull lands inside the boat, which is run aground, right? On one end is Sarah Planto. She's a red-haired, white-faced woman wearing a evening gown, which she has pulled up to her thighs. And on the other hand is Vix, another Azathanai, who is huge, iron-skinned, and he's sitting holding a parasol.
He
She
looks like a
asks
troll,
what? Sorry, what?
basically. He looks
What?
like a troll.
He has tusk, right? Yeah, he has a tusk. Yeah, but he says, yeah, his children are Telomen
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
Trell. Okay, yeah, both of his children. Then she asks what happened to Skillen, and we are told that it is a new guise for his old self, and he talks in only scents and flavors. Sarah thinks that he will have nothing to say to her after the last unfortunate incident. So basically, do you have any idea what Skillen is up to? Why does nobody?
I have no idea. No
He's so
clue.
cool.
I
Like
don't know.
everybody
just,
is
I think
not
this.
on talking terms with him.
I
Nobody can,
think
he
that's
just
the running.
nobody welcomes him. Nobody wants him
Oh
around.
god.
It's so
We
weird.
even asked Steve about a certain thing in Witness, and he said no, and I just take it because like nobody likes Skillen that he can't even be that.
Oh yeah,
So
sure. Okay, yeah, sorry, yeah.
it's just it's like nobody likes Skillendro, absolutely fucking no one, and I
Skillen.
don't know why.
Right. So, Krull says that Skillen will be happy to dislodge her boat, but she knows that Vix can do it. He's just being stubborn right now.
He's a bit stubborn. I don't know who these two are, but they're great.
Yeah. And then Krull tells him that they have left spawn called Trell, who are warring with Telomen. And he points out that Telomen are also your spawn. And Vix says they both even share the same god, but still they're fighting in his name. So now what is he going to do?
Yeah.
He's going to create a new race from Telomen, Trell, and Dog Runner, and he's going to call them Bargast. And he doesn't care if all are objects to using Dog Runners. How does he say that he doesn't
Yeah,
care?
I piss in her fire. See how she objects to that.
Yeah. So Sarah tells him they were trying to explore an Azath house, which was underwater or something, and it failed. And once, is there any significance to this? This is just something random, right?
What?
This underwater Azath house and all that.
I don't think it's underwater. I think it's like we have been attempting to explore an Azath house in a boat. Well, we weren't successful. I don't think there's an actual Azath house underwater. I think she's just fucking with them.
I don't know. Yeah, this is so weird. It is. So now, once Vix loses this war of obstinacy, she sees plenty of adventures in their future. Then she talks about how she got her green coal and calls Krull as being.
Yeah? I'm dumb.
What
we
happened?
do know there's an Azath house at the bottom of the ocean. It's the
There
one where
is one.
Commandaros and Setchel are.
Yeah, there is one. But
I'm dumb.
why would they need a boat to go underwater?
because they can't do it like race, you know? They can't just go down, take a few steps, go back up, and continue like that. They're primitives.
Maybe. Yeah, primitive as that. Right. Okay. So, what is it? Yeah. She calls Skrull as being too masculine and too pale. And then he admits that he has freely given his power and his blood now swirls in the cosmos. Vix is worried what will happen if the Telomen find this potent magic. So he's going to stop them by visiting them as a vengeful god. Vix says he has made a mess. And Krull says it is done now, but he's going to impose order upon this using dragons. What does she immediately say?
Poor Skilendro.
Poor Skilendro. Right, now this is part B. When Hanako and Lasa are walking around, they're going on their way. They've left behind the mountains and forests, and finally they have reached a level plain. Lasa is singing some children's song of an orphan who is stealing fruit from an old witch. But one night he plucks the wrong fruit, and the rhyme goes something like, "Don't mess with witches, they're rotten to the core." She notices that Hanako is exhausted and so doesn't lavish her with attention, and she so loves to be lavished, right? He suggests something like, "Please, you can carry your own bedroll." But then she brings up gravity and aging and how having husbands who carry everything is the best way to combat aging, right? And is Hanako, if he's sad, he only has himself to blame because he's the one not reaching out or whatever. On the way, they see an old man sitting cross-legged. He has an empty bowl next to him. He tells them he believes the universe is expanding and it is all mortal souls in eternal flight. And if they ever find the first soul, they should be grateful for all of this. And then he farts and says, "Beans, no rice." And these two just walk on. And Lasa hisses Azathana. This guy has to be that old man Moon, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm fairly sure.
Yeah.
I think he's finally found his aspect. Because I think publication went Forge of Darkness, Blood and Bone, Full of Light. So I think we see, Old Man before he's aspected, Old Man Moon and Blood and Bone, and now Old Man with an actual aspect here. Because has the ball, he's naked, he's gaunt, and mostly hairless, And he talks about the expanding universe. So yeah, I'm fairly sure it's Old Man Moon, which I have no idea why he farts though. I don't know.
I'm just going to say this is some inner joke between these guys of beans, no rice.
It could be.
It is so too specific to be, just comes up so randomly.
Because Occam lived a lot in Southeast Asia, so maybe he just had a few unfortunate comings and goings with beans and no rice.
On their digs and all that. Who knows what they're doing?
Could be, yeah.
So weird.
I don't know. I have no idea. We're grasping at straws here. Bear with us. Yeah.
Right. So I'm done. We finished this chapter. Right?
Done. Yeah.
So this was chapter 12.
Yeah.
As I said, nothing really happens. It was a chapter.
It was a chapter, yeah, for sure.
I reread this after last week's.
Yeah.
Even the next one is going to be quite easy, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah. The next one's fun.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you haven't listened to the audiobook, at least for Lasa, just seriously, do it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so good. Okay. Should we wind up?
Yeah. So, thank you very much for listening and / for watching.
Yeah.
I have been Lee.
I'm Mora. I can never get the cue.
Yeah. Sorry. And good night.
Good night. Bye.